So you want to start looking at real estate, you want to start looking at homes for sale, and you find an agent and they tell you, okay, for your protection though, I can't show you these homes unless you sign this buyer agency agreement so that I can best represent you, and you need to have a pre-approval. And this sounds great, right? I mean, they want to protect you. But what are you actually signing? The pre-approval we already know is a great thing because it shows that you're actually qualified to be looking at homes in a certain price range and not wasting anyone's time, including the sellers or the agents, or most importantly, yours. But what is the buyer agency agreement? Well, basically, this spells out the duties owed to you, the consumer, by the agent. And we were taught the acronym OLD CAR in our real estate class. And that stands for obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accountability, and reasonable care. However, it also talks about what you owe the buyer's agent, and that can be pretty substantial. In return for the services and protections given to you by the agent, you may be required to pay a fee, sometimes at closing, sometimes at front, and although sometimes these fees might be covered by the seller, that's not always the case. So you could be on the hook to make sure that your buyer agent gets compensated according to your contractual agreement, regardless of where you buy in Pennsylvania, even if you wind up using a different real estate brokerage or agent. So that could result in you having to pay 2 separate commissions or broker's fees depending on how your contracts are written. Now, what if you don't like your agent? Can you just fire them? Well, not necessarily. Once you sign this form, in Pennsylvania we call it a buyer agency contract, you might be required to be tied to them or risk having to pay these double fees. So the moral of the story is just read what is given to you and make sure that you're comfortable with that agent before you sign something. There's really nothing that requires you to sign anything that you're not comfortable with just to see a house. However, you may lose, and probably will lose, those protections that we discussed earlier. That particular agent might not show you those homes based on their own policy or their broker's policy. And I'm not telling you to not sign anything or to blindly sign whatever they put in front of you. I'm just warning you of the long-term relationship that you might be creating by signing a buyer's agency agreement. If you're not happy with that agent or that brokerage right off the bat, maybe seek a second opinion. There are also documents that you can sign that few brokers actually use because it doesn't fully protect the broker's or the agent's interest as much, and that's called the non-exclusive buyer agency agreement. It only ties you to that agent for homes that they've already shown you. So perhaps consider that as an alternative option when discussing your relationship details with your agent. Again, protection is a great thing. And in Pennsylvania, we are required to give you a copy of the consumer notice, which talks about the different types of agency relationships between an agent and the consumer. And it also says that unless agreed upon, we don't necessarily represent for your best behalf just because you walk in the door and start talking with us. So be careful of what that protection might cost you if you choose the wrong agent. If you have more questions about this, I'm happy to schedule a time that we could discuss this further. I hope to hear from you soon. My name is Will Claus. I'm an associate broker with Davis R. Chant Realtors right here at Lake Wallenpaupack.